Hey everyone, I'm Sarah Simpers, and today I'm going to talk to you about docs coverage at scale. I gave this presentation at the Write the Docs Bay Area meetup in July, but we were a little short on time, and I've had a few people reach out and ask if I could share a recording of the full content that I had planned. So I'm going to do that today for you. I'm going to start with the same preamble that I did for the meetup, which is basically that I know that no matter what your situation is right now, if you are in the technical writing industry, AI has really rocked our industry. That's something that we all have in common. But even with all the challenges that AI presents for a writer, I really encourage you to look at the AI glass half full because AI is enabling a single technical writer to do things in that, a team of 10 writers would have taken 6 months. Now a single writer can do in like a couple of hours. So even if you're out of work, or even if you are a lone writer at a startup or whatever your situation is, if you are that one technical writer that gets those skills with AI, then you are really ahead of the curve. So I encourage you to, even though AI is presenting new challenges for us, to really embrace it in the ways that it can help you. And today I'm going to talk about docs coverage at scale, which is just one practical application that we did at Twilio for how AI can help a single writer really scale up their ability to work. But I encourage you to think about it more broadly about all the ways that you could do this. Okay, so let's go ahead and do docs coverage at scale. What's changed in terms of coverage and the future of docs? So two things have changed. One is like the challenge side, right? We're looking at challenges and opportunities. So the challenge side is that content entry points have changed. AI has fundamentally changed the entry points for humans finding and consuming your documentation. I'm not going to talk about agents today because they're a little bit of a different breed. I'm just talking about how humans are finding your content, right? So they are using ChatGPT, they're using Gemini, they're using answer engines. They do plain language search. So the way that they're searching has changed. They're not using your product names. They're using like their actual use case of what they're searching for, and using it in plain language. And they're asking in a different place, right? They're not going to Google as much. They are going to these answer engines, AI answer engines, and those engines are sourcing your docs content to supply an answer. And so they are indirectly consuming your docs content in that way. The challenge here is that if LLMs can't connect your product to the user's use case, your docs remain invisible. So if you haven't sufficiently made that connection for the LLM in your content of what the use cases are for your content, then when someone uses plain language to search for it and the answer engine uses RAG to retrieve that content and break it down into little chunks of content, it will look for where the user's prompt is closest to the context of what's covered on the page in those chunks and connect them together. If it's not making that connection to the pieces of your documentation, then you're not showing up in search results, AI engine results, and that's bad. On the opportunity side, we have the scale and efficiency. So AI allows a single technical writer to find and fix coverage gaps across thousands of pages with unprecedented speed. So basically, a comprehensive docs inventory and coverage is now within reach in a way that it wasn't before. So we can really start thinking outside the box in the kind of things we can accomplish with AI to cover all of these sorts of ways that people look for our content. All right, so this is my quick overview. I'm Sarah Simpers. I'm a staff educator, developer educator at Twilio. I've been technical writing for about 13 years. I keep a saltwater reef tank, which has nothing to do with my talk. I just like to show pictures of it. And I'm a docs data and metrics nerd, which means that I really like to pay attention to the outcomes of docs changes. And I'm going to talk today a little bit about the outcomes of the changes we made for this project. But also, I just really love talking about outcomes of docs changes in general. So if you have ideas of how to measure the things that you're changing or want to discuss that, I'm happy to talk about that more offline. So I recently led an IA project at Twilio. And I learned a lot along the way. We made quite a few changes as part of that project, but I think the thing that had the biggest impact was the places that we were starting to cover these gaps in content. And so when I thought about what I wanted to talk about today, I wanted to talk about the change that was the smallest amount of effort for the biggest amount of impact, so that no matter what your situation is, if you are a lone technical writer at a startup, or you're a freelance writer, you're just getting started, you can do things like this without having to have a large team of writers at your disposal. Um, and I wanted something that was just practical and measurable and attainable for most people in the field. All right. So what do I mean by coverage? Let's get into that. So I don't mean, do you cover every feature or thing that your product does? I basically mean both the horizontal coverage, which is the discoverability axis. So are you showing up in the ways that people search for your content, including when they're asking an AI answer engine? So that's findability and use cases and intent and things like that. And then also the depth, the vertical axis, which is kind of the full spectrum of user ability. So whether they are brand new to your product and they're a beginner, and they need to be introduced to the things that your product does, all the way through experts and edge cases and troubleshooting and optimizing and basically like the very deep levels of content coverage. So everything in between those axes is what I mean by coverage. So you might have a tutorial in your docs for every single thing that your product does, but if you're not covering it sufficiently in the ways that people are actually searching for it and their real world use cases, and you're not covering everything from beginner through advanced, then people are not going to find the content that they're looking for from your documentation, and they're going to get it from somewhere else. So an example of that, looking at bad docs coverage, is this was from before running the IA project. I went to Gemini and I asked, how do I send voice notifications with Twilio, which is a common use case for one of Twilio's products called programmable voice. And ideally, the guides for how to make an outbound phone call with programmable voice would show up in the sources that Gemini used to answer the question. However, it did not. 3 out of 6 of these results are not Twilio at all, which is very bad. We definitely don't want it to be using third-party sources that could be incorrect and could lead to people having errors when they're trying to run commands. 2 of these were Twilio doc sources, but they were imperfect sources. So one is iOS SDK specific, which is a very small subset of programmable voice users. So unideal for it to be using that as a source. And then one was just a landing page that had no actionable info, no like TLDR on it, nothing. All that it was sourcing from there was that you can use Studio for drag and drop, which is one of our other products. There was one thing that I would consider a good source, and that was a YouTube video about building your first programmable voice app. So we needed better coverage to show up in this way. This is how people are actually searching for our products. Instead of going to Google and typing in Twilio programmable voice docs, they're coming to an AI answer engine and using their real world use case in plain language. Like, how do I send voice notifications? How do I send alerts? How do I send reminders? Terms like that, that even though AI is better than Google at matching intent in that way, that understanding that like notifications can be the same as alerts, can be the same as reminders. If there's no terminology in the chunks of content that it breaks our docs down into that match with that content, with that meaning, it's not going to rate them as similar enough for them to show up in the sources here. So this was something that we needed to address as part of this project. But the problem is that we have 9,000 pages in our Twilio documentation contributed by over 300 employees over many years. No one person knows what's covered in those 9,000 pages. It's completely unrealistic to think that one person could know that. And understanding the coverage across 9,000 pages is a monumental task. We needed to track coverage for things like use case, for beginner versus advanced, by product, and lots of other ways that you could slice and dice our docs in the ways that people are actually looking for them in AI. And all of this needed to be done by one writer, myself, in 1 quarter. That was the goal. So we were looking for a workflow that would make that attainable. So the solution that I came up with, which is AKA How We Are Minding the Gap, had to feature this picture from the London Underground on Minding the Gap, which is basically like pay attention to the gaps so you don't fall into them and injure yourself. So this is how we're doing that. We started by creating an inventory of both docs and product, labeling the docs, finding the gaps, filling the gaps, and measuring the results. So I'm going to go over each of those steps, how we did them. This is to give you ideas of things that you might be able to do in your docs. You may not be doing your docs the same way that Twilio is. This may not be like perfectly convertible into a process that you can use, but I'm hopeful that it will, again, it will help you to see the AI glasses half full, help you to see the potential of the kinds of things that a single writer can build in a short period of time to do really large scale tasks that weren't possible before. And that maybe it will just kind of spark your brain of a way that you could do a similar sort of thing for your own company. So step one is inventory. So this is a two-part step. So the first thing is the product inventory, and then the second thing is the docs inventory. So the product inventory you would get by working with whoever holds the product knowledge at your company of what the use cases are, how people are actually using your products, and what the component pieces are that make up that use case, like what information they would need from the docs to build that use case. So at our company, that was PM knowledge, but it may be someone else who holds it at your company. It's basically a knowledge extraction from them to find out what the use cases are and what pieces of documentation make it up. So for example, one of the use cases for programmable voice is sending notifications. And the pieces that make that up are some of the basic services that programmable voice can do, like say, gather, and pay, which are 3 different things that out of the box voice can do. And then there's some add-on advanced features that you might want to use, like branded calling or answering machine detection. Branded calling makes it so that when you call people, you're not marked as spam, so they're more likely to pick up your voice notifications. Answering machine detection can tell whether a voicemail picks up the phone, so you know whether you want to leave a message after the beep or you want to do something else. So basically, there's tons of different advanced features for voice and tons of different services for voice, but only a certain subset fall under notifications. So the goal of this is to figure out what the use cases are. We had about 10 common use cases for programmable voice, and then figure out what services and features fall under that use case so that you know which specific subset of docs is relevant to this use case. So the next thing to do after that was the part that took more time because it was a knowledge extraction from an expert. The next piece is the docs inventory, which I vibe coded. I did this via script. So I went to Gemini and I said, give me a script that a Python script that will walk through our docs repository recursively and list out the file path for every page in our voice docs, the page name, a bunch of other information about it, like the MD character count, which there's some implications or there's some indication that there may be problems for agents to read pages that are too long and things like that. Schema type, which we're using for surfacing our pages better for AI, lots of other things. But what's relevant to this talk is that I had it look through the content and find the products and features that were used on that page. So basically I gave it a list of like 50 products and features and said, like, look for this string. And if you find it on this page, then list it out as a product or feature used. And then in the next column for use cases, take the inventory from step 1. So I fed it the product inventory. And if it's a page that uses, for example, answering machine detection, and answering machine detection is listed under notifications, then put an X under the notifications column. So in this way, we ended up with a very large spreadsheet that was a docs inventory of all the pages and the use cases that they cover, in addition to lots of other information like the products used and beginner versus advanced and things like that. So we've got our Comprehensive inventory. Just as a side note, if you are not doing Docs as code, because this is required using a repository and stepping through it recursively, you may be able to get for like a COTS product, you may be able to get a downloaded list of your pages, or you may be able to scrape the sitemap and or the content programmatically to get this kind of inventory and then do sort of the same thing. So it is adaptable for a non-Docs as code workflow. All right, so the next step is kind of a simple one. It's basically label the docs. Put the info that you gathered and put into that inventory onto the docs themselves. This is not strictly required. You could continue, you could just take the inventory and every time work off the inventory. But I like having the labels right on the docs. First of all, it satisfies my sense of needing everything to be organized, but also it helps on a team of multiple writers for everyone to have the same reference info right on the docs telling them where these pages belong. So you can see, for example, we used landing pages as the category name because we have one landing page for each use case. But basically, there's one for each use case. So that field tells us what the use cases are for this page. We also have the journey stage, which I'll get into a little bit later, the feature level, which is advanced versus basic, things like that. So to get this done, I just gave Claude the spreadsheet from step one, the docs inventory from step one, and told Claude to go through my docs repo in the voice directory and put labels in the front matter for all the use cases, for the feature levels, for the journey stages, and for other information that was in the inventory. This was easy. This was done quickly with Claude, very low lift, and got all that information from the inventory right onto the docs themselves in a way that customers can't see, but that writers can see it. If you use a COTS product instead of Docs as code, you may be able to mass upload tags or things like that. That might be another way of putting labels directly on the docs if you don't do Docs as code. All right, so the next step is finding the gaps. So this this is a Claude skill called the Docs IA label bot that I built. This is, if you're intimidated by the idea of building a Claude skill, I actually literally just went to Claude and I didn't even open a skills.md file. I just went to Claude and said, build me a skill that does this thing. So please don't feel intimidated. The first thing that it does is it checks for integrity issues and drift. So it checks like basically, do the labels match reality, right? Which is good to do because things will shift over time inevitably. And then it does a content report. So it outputs them to a PDF so that we can attach it to a Jira ticket. And I'm going to show you 2 pages from the content report so you can see what it looks like when we're looking for gaps. And again, this was very easy to build, right? Because I just told Claude exactly what I wanted and it built it for me. So the first thing is a discoverability check, which is basically checking what Claude thinks that people will ask. So this is a list of user queries based on the use cases and feature lists or product feature list that is in the front matter labels. And what Claude thinks people will be asking, and then basically whether or not it's well surfaced. So whether the content exists and it's well surfaced, so it will show up well in AI search results. The content exists, but it's not well surfaced, so we need to do a better job at mapping together that use case versus or product versus actual, docs language. And then missing docs, so things that we don't have any documentation for it at all, or Claude couldn't find it, which might as well be we don't have it at all. So we need to make sure that we have that. You could probably make this more relevant even if you fed Claude info from the Google Search Console or an AI visibility tool. So you could take info from the Google Search Console, which is a free tool, and see what people are actually searching for that maps to your docs, and put that into Claude so that it has more information about how people actually search for your docs. But I think that this is pretty useful as it is, that it gives a little bit of context of just like, what does Claude think people are searching for, and how well is it surfaced? The next thing is finding gaps by journey distribution. So this is basically that those two axes, they're reversed here, but we have the rows as use cases, and across the top we have stages of the doc's journey. So this is like the stages that we've identified that people go through when they need docs. So they start by evaluating, and then they plan and build, and then they troubleshoot and maintain. So this shows us where the holes are, basically, by use case and by where they are in that doc's journey. How many pages of documentation do we have for each of them? So you can see here that we have a critical gap in planning content. We need to add more planning content across several use cases, and that we have strong build coverage. So we have quite a few docs pages already for how to build with each of these. So we run this Cloud skill monthly to see where the gaps are, because things change over time, right? So inevitably things will shift and we'll need to add more. And there's lots more things that this can do if you give Claude information about what you're interested in. These were just the kinds of gaps that we were looking for, but of course your doc set may have different critical needs and areas that you want to monitor. So this is probably the most important part, is how to fill the gaps. So step 4 is filling the gaps. Again, the caveat that the way that we did this at Twilio may not be the best way to do it for your docs. It really depends on your doc set and your needs. But I'm going to tell you why we did it this way. So we only added about 18 pages as part of the IA project, but they had high AEO value. So instead of adding lots of new tutorials, we added these new landing pages, like this page for notification guides. And the reason for doing this is that it gives you this curated content all in one place, which is very handy if you're trying to send notifications and there's like over 300 pages in the voice docs. You want to just have the subset that's relevant to you all in one place. Without putting it into its own area in the sidebar, because we did some user research and people found the sidebar very overwhelming if there was a lot there and it was like very heavily nested. It also has this AI-friendly TLDR. So you can see for make outbound phone calls, it says call recipients and use the say TWIML verb. So not only does it tell you what the page is going to cover, which is making outbound phone calls, it tells you how to do the thing, which is use the say TWIML verb. AI, in my experience from having tested this, loves to take these little snippets and use them. So a TLDR like that really gives you, like in one sentence, how to do the thing is super useful. And this puts all of those in one place. So when it chunks the content, it can chunk together. It can see not only that it has that TLDR, but you can see in every sentence here, the word notification or alert or reminder is used. So each chunk has this really like great semantic density of when somebody searches for notifications, a word that is similar or related to notifications has been used many times in this chunk, so it will be rated very highly as relevant to the prompt that users are giving. This also avoids an SEO tax. So we did it this way because really the make outbound calls tutorial is how you do a lot of different use cases. It's how you send notifications. It's how you build an outbound call center. It's how you do quite a few of the programmable voice use cases, but it's better not to have 5 to 10 copies of the same exact tutorial with just a few words changed, because Google will issue a penalty if you are basically creating copies of the same exact page. So to avoid that SEO tax and also the maintenance overhead, we just have one make outbound calls page, but on every landing page, it's positioned in the way that is relevant to that use case. So make outbound calls page on the voice notifications page is play a text-to-speech notification as an outbound call. Again, great for AI picking it up, which I'm going to show you as we talk about results in just a moment. All right, so measuring results. This is the fun part. So this is just a before and after quick shot of when I asked after the project in Gemini, how do I send voice notifications with Twilio? You can see that 3 out of 6 of the results are now the notifications guides page that we added. And then the other 3 results are also good results. So we went from one good result to all of them being good, which is great. This is just a one-off like showing before and after. Anytime you ask AI a question like this, it's going to give you slightly different results. Even the same model, the same engine, it's going to give you slightly different results. So if you want to do manual prompting to test, which is an option if you're not able to get access to other tools, just do it a bunch of times, is basically my recommendation there is, do it maybe 20 times and get a broader signal of are things showing up better than they did before. So that's the first way you can measure results for this. The next is using an AI visibility tool. So at Twilio, we use a tool called Evertune, but there's lots of them out there. There's others, some others that I had written down were Otterly, Profound. There's a bunch of visibility tools, and then there's also traffic tools. You can use Google Search Console. You can use Amplitude is one that we use at Twilio to track both the traffic and the journeys through the pages, and also to track conversion to paid accounts. So basically, what's the revenue impact of the changes that we made? And then finally, there's some free tools. So you can use Google Search Console to see how people are searching for your docs, and you can also look at Google traffic data to see whether traffic is increasing to these pages. But just to tell you basically the outcome using AI visibility tools of these changes, we had a 450% increase for the prompts that we were tracking around use cases where basically cases where the right pages weren't showing up before. We had a 450% relative increase in those pages, the correct pages showing up after these changes. So a huge impact. And as you can see here, these landing pages showed up a lot. It actually had a better impact for the landing pages than I expected. We also, for some new pages that we added, we saw them showing up as the top cited result in 17 to 25% of all times that AI across many different prompts and many different engines and many different models were showing up about 25% of the time, which is great. And so there's lots of small changes you can make on actual content pages that I'm happy to talk about offline because it would take a long time to talk about all the changes we made. But I think landing pages are where it's at for like big impact changes that you can make easily. Oh, and I forgot to mention on the landing page that all those landing pages were also made via AI. So basically, I just went to Claude and said, take all the pages that have the front matter label for notifications and put them together on one landing page with a TLDR. So all of that was done automatically. I mean, we checked everything, but everything there was done via AI, was very easy and low lift for one writer. So that is all I have for you. I would love to chat more. I've left my email here. Happy to be a sounding board if you try something like this and you want to talk about scripts or prompts or labels or metrics or anything really. Happy to talk more. And just wanted to say that, the future of docs is really being built now. So I encourage you to leverage AI. I encourage you to be that writer who gets ahead of the curve and to build great things. Thank you.